This is part of the series breaking down the RRSP Meltdown and other retirement drawdown strategies. This is our third video now of an ever-growing list. But first, let me talk to you about action bias. I'll tell you what that is, and I'll tie it all in to the case studies that will follow. So first and foremost, what is action bias? Action bias describes our tendency to favor action over not acting. Often, we believe it's for our benefit. However, there are times when we feel compelled to act, even if there's no evidence that it would actually lead to a better outcome compared to doing nothing or staying at status quo. Our tendency to respond with action is often a default behavior. It's an automatic instinct, even if there's no solid rationale to support that acting versus staying put will yield better results. I am explaining this because oftentimes when professionals and industry experts talk about behavioral finance and action bias, they describe it to only lead to investment decisions. I'm here today to discuss how this actually becomes part of planning behavior and planning psychology as well. You may believe that the defaults in case of the retirement drawdown strategy, the default of matching RIF minimums, or the default of taking your CPP and government benefits at age 65, that it's always bad. And that seems to be an ongoing trend now with the clients that are coming to us. There's a lot of clients that are now believing or self-prescribing that they should be employing an RRSP meltdown or employing a delay for their CPP and their OAS. Yes, that could be true, but oftentimes they're coming to this conclusion without really looking at any evidence for their own case beyond YouTube videos. And my suspicion is that has to do with access to information and access to conversations like we're having right now. I'll go back to that action bias comment first. Action bias doesn't just affect your trading and your investing behavior. It can actually spill into how you're making decisions with your overall financial plan. And in this context, for this series, for this playlist, that could apply to the RRSP meltdown. The fact that you're doing something different than the required minimums or doing something different than the conventional wisdom, you might feel like you're automatically getting better outcomes. So I am shooting this video to give a preface and give some background to how you should really be reviewing the decision to melt down your RRSP or your registered accounts versus keeping status quo. See, the decision to employ a retirement meltdown or RRSP meltdown has a few other implications that you need to pay attention to. I actually want to direct your attention to this article here. It's a little bit older now, or maybe it's a white paper. That's probably the best way to describe this. This was actually published in 2022. It had some publicity around it because the way that the headline was worded made it sound like the RRSP meltdown is a bad idea for most Canadians. But when you read the actual article or the actual paper, all it says, and in fact, even the title, it says Retirement Drawdown Choices and how it impacts your RIFs or RRSPs, TFSA, and non-registered accounts. That's the decision to where to pull your income from in any given year in retirement. One of the criticisms it poses with the RRSP meltdown is oftentimes, I'm not going to read you this whole thing, but oftentimes it could be misleading or unreliable as a decision-making tool if you are only using a single scenario projection, meaning one rate of return comparing one single year for life expectancy. So how I want to set up this series is going to be a step above what you likely have seen elsewhere, or perhaps what you've even seen with your own personal analysis. What I hope to do is compare the RRSP meltdown by breaking it down on asset levels. So we'll have a case study where a couple has $750,000 each in their RRSPs, $500,000 and at $250,000. Then we add some more permutations to that. Now, what if instead of a married couple, that now turns into a scenario where it's a single individual planning that? Same thing. At $750,000 in RRSPs, $500,000 and at $250,000. And then we'll add scenarios where they have pensions or with no pension. The next tier above that is, what if now we look at varying life expectancy and then varying rates of return? Now, I'm undertaking this as a research or an educational project. The issue is I still have my day job. I actually have to do this for clients. So I will have to limit the scope on the rate of return comparisons. What if somebody earns an average of 4.5% throughout their retirement, at 5.5%, at 6.5%, and will that have an impact on the retirement drawdown strategy that would be more efficient for them? The next step then is you need to understand, when you're doing this drawdown, where do you allocate the extra funds? You're taking it from an RSP. Do you save that in a TFSA, or do you save that in a non-registered account? That will then also have an impact. Now, there's nothing wrong or malicious or misleading with looking at single scenario plans, because the truth is, oftentimes financial planners, at least that's what we do, we look at all these scenarios in the background. We look at a lot of these things, and if we deem it to be irrelevant, we don't have to show it, at least not everything, to our clients. I've worked on files recently where there's 32 different planning scenarios that I ran against one another. And I'm not saying more is better, but that's personally how I work. If I want to be able to give direction with the most confidence that I could possibly have, I look at these scenarios, even if I more or less understand what the outcome is going to be. And the reason why a lot of these recommendations or online videos that talk about the meltdown only present one life expectancy is, honestly, it's quite difficult to model it. I used to have to do a lot of this manually. Your boy's gonna flex here a little bit, but I use snap projections. They didn't have a clear functionality before where you can compare the trends of the decisions that you're making between one scenario or another. That has been implemented recently, and the reason why I'm saying that's a flex is I kind of help advise on it. Let me switch screens here just so you can see what I used to have to do when I'm running comparisons like this. What I used to have to do when comparing decision-making items for clients is actually export the numbers and in the relevant columns from a financial planning tool and create our own scenario based on what happens if we follow a certain sequence. Does that improve or does it make it worse? Does it improve your goal or does it make it more challenging for you? And I would have to break that up into multiple items. So this first sheet here that you're seeing is comparing the estate. If the client cares about the estate, enlarging what they're leaving behind to their family, their loved ones, or their cause, then that would have a different sequence and a different impact as well. So I lay this out and I show this as a communication tool to the client. These are the drawdown strategies that we recommend. In this case, it was a bit of an advanced meltdown and maintaining an insurance policy that they already have, converting it and maintaining it. I showed what the net impact is for the estate. For them, maintaining that insurance was important. There were some other personal reasons for that, but I'm looking at this from the spreadsheet just from a math perspective. If we followed the RRSP meltdown versus the conventional, in this case, from age 63 to age 89, 92 actually, our recommended sequence in the recommendation to maintain that insurance policy yielded them a higher estate. If they lived past that, then they were better off employing the conventional method. In this case, because I said the client cared about maintaining that insurance policy, there's some personal ties to that and some belief items that led them to maintain it. So that was maintained in both of these scenarios. So that wasn't really the item being reviewed. This comparison was strictly for the sequence. And now they can see this clearly, that, hey, if I believe I will live past 93, then the conventional approach actually makes sense. I'm not getting into the weeds as far as the analytics is concerned, but what I'm trying to teach you is as we go through these case studies, you need to understand that the strategy and the implementation is only secondary to what we are trying to accomplish. And for this person, they were trying to make their estate as large as possible. So we left them with this. And again, I would manually create the spreadsheet and plot it. This is a visual representation of that. That in the conventional method, you're a little bit worse off for the next 20 years, let's say. But after that, the conventional is better. So if you believe you're going to live a shorter period of time, or your retirement is going to be shorter, then the conventional made sense for this person. So that's one side of the analysis, the estate. The next piece is the item that most people are touting to be the biggest benefit of the RRSP meltdown, and that's the taxes. For simplicity, again, because I didn't have a tool, how I did this is I treated the clawback as an extra tax, which essentially that's what it is. It's a recovery tax. So where are we better off? If our goal is to save personal income taxes, in her case, the conventional approach of delaying the RRSP and a RIF conversion for as long as possible, she was better off doing that until she was 85 years old for a few reasons. One, you can see here that in her case, there was no clawback to worry about in the first, the first 7 years. I look at the total tax. Because we're making withdrawals from a TFSA and pre-tax accounts, there was hardly any tax paid in the first 7 years. And you'll see that in the following case studies too. But this preamble, in my opinion, is necessary so that you can see how you can be educated as far as making decisions for what strategy to employ for yourself. And I'm not saying you should do this on your own, but whether you're hiring somebody to look at this for you or not, there is more than just one answer. It depends on what you're trying to go after. And going back to why I said I was flexing about working with snap projection, is they've actually now implemented this as a multi-year trend line, very similar to this here, and I'll switch to that screen right now. So this is what's to come. I hope that I'm not rambling on, but there's really a lot of things for you to understand instead of just looking at the highlights before you make decisions like this. So what I want to show you is that if you're looking at your own financial plan and your own financial situation and you want to understand what strategy works best for you, create a testing environment. If what you're solving for is efficiency and you already have enough, and then going back to our case with Frank and Hope, our assumption, our constraint was all they need for the rest of their life is $72,000 adjusted to today's inflation. And they are okay blending their source of income from RSPs or TFSAs or what have you depending on what's more efficient. So when I compare scenarios, the very first thing that I look at is our lifestyle spending staying the same? And I'm not even going to get into the weeds of what scenarios I'm comparing right now. We'll see that in the following case studies. But lifetime expenses for them is $1,987,440. Same with this scenario, same with that scenario, same with that scenario. That is our constant. So that's how you should weigh out these strategies. If what I'm hoping to accomplish is already feasible, that's the first thing that you need to understand. Can I even afford retirement? Can I even sustain the income that I want for my retirement? And in this case, based on our assumptions, they can handle it. They have more than enough. Then you move on to, okay, what then matters? In this scenario, total lifetime personal tax of $389,000, then $418, then $388, and then $424. So if tax is all you care about, you'll pick the most efficient one because I get to hit my target spending anyway. But what if there's the ancillary items? Like in the manual spreadsheet that I showed, we were looking at the estate. So this is where this gets tricky because taxes really split into two. Your personal lifetime income tax and the final tax bill, so to speak. When you pass, what happens? How much is your estate paying on taxes? The people that talk about RRSP meltdowns, specifically the single scenario analysis, they tend to over-index on this, the tax on the estate. In this scenario, which is the base scenario, the default, if Frank and Hope did nothing, they will have a tax of $615,000. Versus this strategy, they'll have a tax on their estate of $407,000. So that looks like the winner, if that's all we were looking at. But that gets really myopic because what really matters is this number here, after paying it all. So this might have a higher tax on the estate, but the net benefit is larger than this scenario here. And I'll show you what alterations were made. And in this case, actually, because of the naming convention that I employed, it's pretty easy to see. So doing a lazy meltdown and deferring CPP was better than a systematic meltdown. And we'll get into that, I promise you. This is just showing you what's to come. And I hope that it doesn't scare you. I have a feeling this is almost becoming a tutorial more for the people in the field, which is not a bad thing. However, I just want to encourage, 1, divergent thinking, 2, independent thinking, and having your own agency when you're looking at your retirement plan. So don't get distracted by the tax on the estate if it really boils down to what you get to leave behind. We'll do more of this, I promise, and I'll even explain this strategy, that strategy versus this strategy. But my call to action here is there could be a scenario, and it's very likely that it is possible, that there's a scenario for somebody that's watching this where ignoring the RRSP meltdown actually makes sense. And we'll see some of those scenarios. I'll go back to the trends analysis that I was talking about. So let's look at this in real dollars. So now we have a way of seeing or visualizing, okay, the base scenario or the default shows that we're really not paying any taxes on an annual basis until we get to age 71. Then all of a sudden it spikes up, and that will continue to be the most expensive tax strategy on an annual basis going forward. Again, this is not a decision-making item. It's just helping you understand what you should really be looking at and not be distracted by the big tax numbers. You need to take it in context in comparison to what other strategy. And in this case, personal estate after tax, the visuals could be kind of misleading, but this is all done in real dollars. The reason why I'm showing you in real dollars is when we look at these summaries, let's look at the nominal. So the dollars in the future. These are the final numbers in 2046, the delta, or the differences between these in 2046. But by analyzing it into today's numbers, that's what these real dollars assumption is talking about. Are we really better off? If we are, by how much? And it goes to the action bias and sometimes understanding the cost of that action. When you look at it in real 2024 valuation of the same estate, the difference is minute based on these constraints. So at the risk of just getting overly technical and maybe I'm now discouraging you from watching the rest of the series, I just hope that this gives you more of a reason to be analytical and start looking at your own scenario independent of what it looks like on YouTube. That is all for now. I guess I'm supposed to say subscribe if you're still here. Subscribe if you want to watch the rest of the series. I'll make that available in the links below. The article that I showed earlier, I'll also link that below. Thank you for sticking around and watching. I think this video was more for me to really outline what's to come. And again, I just hope this is valuable and it didn't scare you off, because I enjoy getting nerdy and I enjoy showing these things to you guys, knowing that not everybody needs to hire me or will have the means to hire somebody like me. Much love. God bless you, and happy planning, happy retirement. Don't forget to be your own money hero. Bye.